So Jeremy should know that we are not copyright infringing because Jim just told a unique story about using that wonderful title. But it has a lot of meaning. And what do you think the meaning is? I mean, you started to explain the meaning for a business owner, but maybe reflect on it a little bit more. What does it mean to think like a fish as a CEO or as a business?
Well, let's talk CEO. That's really my area. I would say more than business, my expertise is in CEO think. And for a CEO who by definition is multifaceted, has responsibilities over a very, very wide array of needs for the business. In every environment within which they are moving things forward, they need to keep in mind the idea of thinking like a fish because it's human connection. Obviously, you're not thinking like a fish. You're thinking like that human that's across the table from you. But a CEO's role is really kind of simple. And while we can get into depth on any number of areas, the fundamental two main priorities are, number one, delivering a compelling vision of the future and asking for volunteers. And number two, allocating resources for the achievement of the vision. Believe it or not, there are a zillion things. I have a client who gave me a 3-page listing of his responsibilities. And I said, well, let's boil this down. Let's boil this down to what the essence of this is. Mm-hmm. And there is the transactional and the tactical part of running any business that can be mind-boggling. But for the CEOs that spend all of their energy or the bulk of their energy focusing on the transactional side of the business, they are missing the strategic and the higher level parts of the business that really are the pieces that engage people. Now, we've seen this a lot in Gen Zs, believe it or not, who have moved, the generations as they've progressed, have moved away from the baby boom materiality, if you will. It was all about ownership and having stuff to more experiential and toward more social benefit. We're seeing this in the younger generations where they want to work with an organization that has a higher purpose than simple profit. And going back when we talked about, persuasion years ago and the decades in the past, where 100% was on profitability.
Welcome to another episode of the Top Advisor Marketing Podcast. My name is Kirk Lowe. I'm the co-founder and CEO of ProudMouth. Usually have Matt on the show with his wonderful interview skills and voice and mind. Today, I'm taking over the helm, and I've got a very personally significant and business significant guest today. His name is Jim Cascino, and Jim is he'll introduce himself here in a sec. But I'm going to tell you a little story to get us started here. 7 years ago, Matt and I met and started ProudMouth as we know it today. It wasn't named that originally, but it evolved into that. And when we started, we had various roles. We were kind of figuring out, who was going to do what and who was best at what. Kind of moved around a bit. And as we've moved on here, as I suspected, and I'm happy to fulfill, I've evolved into running, operating, envisioning what the business will be. And Matt I don't think Matt had to evolve into it because he's just an incredible orator, presenter, has a lot of passion, a lot of energy, and was really important early on for him and I to get comfortable podcasting, which, as you know, is a big part of our influence acceleration business. Here's the important part. I've wondered at times, I've labeled myself a CEO for years now, and I've wondered at times, at what point did I feel like a CEO? And I don't really know the answer to that. I'm not even really sure sometimes I feel like one now, but I think I am. And we're going to talk today a little bit a little bit, it's kind of like a baseline story about how do you know when you become a CEO. And what's really interesting about this is I do feel like it's kind of lonely. You're overseeing a company and you're responsible for everybody. You're responsible for the direction of the company. Ultimately, everything bubbles up to you, should come from you, and it's a massive responsibility. It's also a fun and challenging opportunity and experience, but it can be really lonely. And a couple of years ago, I started realizing how lonely it was at times. Now I've got a wonderful COO, Matt's a wonderful business partner, and we have great conversations. But being responsible for everything is just a different vibe. And you're kind of searching for, well, how do I collaborate, meet other people, find somebody who's been there, done that. So I started exploring opportunities, and a couple came up. And as I was interviewing and doing my due diligence, I found Jim Cascino. And Jim, I chose Jim over other companies and programs that had proven systems, all kinds of neat things, because, and hopefully you guys can use this in your business. I chose Jim because I felt like he cared more about my business and me than anybody else I interviewed. It was really obvious. And that's one of the things that I think I've done really well when I look at bringing other people in to support the company is how much do they care about what I'm trying to build or what we're trying to build here at ProudMouth. And Jim, it'll probably come out really quick. He is a sincere, empathetic, wise, kind, and a wonderful at simplicity and storytelling, all these things. I'm really building this guy up. He's going to kick some butt for us today. That was a long intro. My apologies, but I think
far too gracious as well, but thank you.
Yeah. So welcome everybody. Drum roll. I don't know if you can hear that because of my noise.
Yeah, little drum roll. Good. Got it. Got it.
Jim Cascino.
Thank you, Kirk. Wow, that was more than I had ever expected and probably have ever received, but I thank you so much for that. I do care about you and I do care about your company. And one of the luxuries I have at this stage in my own career is sort of picking the clients I work with. And it's just as picking employees in your organization is so darn important to your ultimate success and your business success. Same goes with me and my business. But I have the added advantage of saying yes or saying no to prospective clients. And as I've told you so many times, I always tell you you're my very favorite client. And I don't want to offend my other clients, but gosh, in many ways, you really, really are.
Well, that's assuming they're all listening, but hopefully they will. But
I hope they will. Hopefully they'll pick up something today.
That's up to you. But I appreciate it. And I suspect sometimes that stuff's just because you just connect with people, and you and I connected pretty quick.
Yeah, we have. But as we say that, I have to agree that, I don't have Matt's elubiant personality, his deep resonant voice, and his energy that is just bottled. If we could bottle it, we'd all be billionaires. So I don't bring that to the table, but I'm honored by the chance to visit with you today.
Well, everybody's interesting for being themselves, I think. And we're not trying to be Matt with his enthusiasm, although I will try today, because I've been reading that when you wave your hands, because it was a TED Talk, they did an experiment recently, and the people that move their hands around a lot keep people engaged and listening to their presentations longer.
I read that too. Being Italian, I use my hands all the time, though. So I almost need to grasp them. When I was a young kid, my mother would take me shopping and would insist when we went in the stores, I held my hands behind my back so I wouldn't touch stuff. So here I am holding my hand, so I'm not using mine at the moment. But you're absolutely right. Let's use our hands today.
So there's a lot of you listening saying, who cares if you're waving your hands? Because I'm listening to a podcast. The reality is that we put this on YouTube like we do for all of our clients' podcasts, or most of them, the ones that will allow us to anyway. But this is on YouTube, on our ProudMouth channel, and you can watch it and or listen there.
May I interrupt with something that it just reminded me of that you spoke of? I run a company, as you know, called C-Suite Advisors. We have a number of advisors with specialty talents as well as running their own CEO and being CEOs of their own businesses as well. And one of the new practice elements, service offerings we're offering, is all around executive presence and persuasion. And the reason I wanted to mention this is because, in my personal view, this is new. This is new as a part of a responsibility a CEO today has. And it's new to the tune of probably 40 years. Before 40 years ago, the norm was a command and control executive whose only real public opportunity to speak was related to employee meetings or shareholder meetings or things like that. That's really where you saw them. Yeah. You may see them in the Wall Street Journal, but it's on print. But since social media has come into play, since the internet has really gained the enormous traction it has, the CEO's role has become, in some respects, more complicated because a CEO's ability to communicate succinctly, with clarity, passion, and with a delivery that really connects with an audience and understands that audience, by the way, is a vital job skill. And that's why we work with CEOs on this particular part of their being and their comfort in their communication with others. Sorry for interrupting, but I just wanted to mention that and the reason I wanted to mention it, frankly, is because you're really good at it. You're really, really good at it. It's one of your core talents and skills that I see all the time in your podcast, but I also see as we have our Zoom calls and go back and forth. Yeah. I see that in you, and I compliment you.
I appreciate that. It's been some practice for sure. It definitely did not come easy. I don't think it really necessarily came easy for Matt either. Everybody probably thinks it is.
Yeah, I don't believe that.
Yeah.
Maybe.
There are definitely parts because he's pretty spontaneous, mm-hmm. and to be a great communicator and interviewer, you have to be prepared.
True.
And although the little things that happen can actually make something like this great. For instance, you're way off script, and I love it. And I was hoping you would, because you like being on script, but you're already. So I'm really happy. What's really interesting about what you said is that you're talking about CEOs having to evolve into more becoming the face of a company or the voice of a company. In my case, I have a lot of help and support, or our company has a lot of help and support with Matt. But it is true, and it's not just CEOs; it's business owners, experts, and that's really why we do what we do here at ProudMouth. And I love that. And I do remember you had an episode with with this expert in your C-suite, because Jim has a podcast that we produce. You guys can send him messages on LinkedIn if you don't mind, and tell him that he has to do more.
Well,
it's really good at it.
You mentioned it because I do have a whole plan. I'm just trying to figure out how I can afford all the podcasts I want to do. We have the last one I just did through ProudMouth. And incidentally, as you know, I should say it publicly since I say it privately, I adore what ProudMouth does. And I so applaud the idea that while you are a podcasting provider and production house, you are much, much, much bigger than that. You really are an influence marketing shop that is really in a leading position in many ways in helping new marketing expertise be taught, shared, and employed in one's business. And that's what I'm doing. So I really enjoy it.
Remember my post last week that you commented on?
I do.
We were talking about whether or not you can sell while you're on a podcast.
Yes.
We've been selling so far.
The whole time here, haven't we? Yes, we have.
It's funny because you commented that I made it sound like in my post that you shouldn't sell at all. And what I mean is when you give enough value in something, you can ask for something back. Law of reciprocity. So hopefully now we have a couple of things. We've talked a couple of times about what Jim's business does, one of his C-suite professionals, and what ProudMouth does. Now we're going to earn it from you guys. So let's dive into some stuff today.
Great.
These are what we're going to talk about today are 5 business musings or lessons slash analogies that Jim has learned over his 30 plus years running, saving, buying, and selling companies. Just so you guys know, Jim has helped buy and sell, or just sell
No,
over
buy, sell.
buy,
I
sell
bought
8
and sold a lot.
companies over $10 million.
No,
I don't
it's
imagine
actually 15, but thank you. That's good.
15. Well, I've been underselling you, my friend.
Well, no, 15 is
Pardon
almost
the
like,
pun.
the guy can't keep a job. So, the reality is sometimes scary as well as the news itself. But
Yeah.
anyway, let's jump in.
So we're going to share some analogies slash lessons, and here's the first one. The first one is you have an analogy that refers to a fish. Can you share your quote and its purpose? Do you remember that?
I do. I do. I should alert our audience here that am not prepared in the least bit. Well, I'm sure you are, because I know you, Kirk. We agreed that we were just going to do this extemporaneously. So you put me on the
So
spot with
first
that.
thing is to share. I'm just going to keep you
Yeah.
dialed in here. Share
Okay.
what the quote is and then
Yeah.
its purpose.
Yeah.
Just a brief. I've got 3 questions after that follow.
Okay. Well, a little context would probably help. I was with a dearest friend of all in my whole life in Aspen, and in the summer, and he's a genuine outdoorsman. And he said, "Let's go fly fishing." And I said, "I love that idea. I've never done it, but I really want to. I'm very attracted to the core idea." And so we went fly fishing. So we get on the banks of the river, and I ask him, I waders the whole bit, and I say, "Okay, I've got one question for you, George. How do you catch a fish?" And he turned around before he got wet and said, "Think like a fish." And it took me just a nanosecond to realize that there was a great deal of depth to that simple answer, which appeared to be flippant. And I've used that little story often. It works predominantly if you are raising capital, or if you are selling a product, or you are even managing your own workforce. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that you think like the audience you are addressing. And this is a form of EQ, emotional intelligence, that if you think about the needs, the reality, the situation of that person that you are trying to move from A to B, and you successfully connect with that reality, you will be far more successful in not only that particular dialogue, but in all dialogues. So that's where the story came from. Think like a fish is something I just kind of always keep in the back of my mind, because normally the presenter thinks about himself or herself. They think about the message they want to get across. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it's stated, not stated is not the right word. It's stilted. It just isn't genuine. It's not authentic. And what you're really looking for is an authentic conversation that allows you to connect with the person first and foremost before you get into the selling your idea.
Do you the gentleman you're fishing with? His name wasn't Jeremy Wade, was it?
No. George Morris, one of my dearest friends.
So Jeremy, you know who Jeremy Wade is?
I don't know.
He's that famous. He has at least two TV shows about fishing, River Monsters.
Oh, really?
And he wrote a book called How to Think Like a Fish and Other Lessons from a Lifetime of Angling.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And I did you know there's a book called Think Like a Fish?
I did not know that either. No. In all candor, I'm not much of a fisherman. I'm not sure. I didn't catch a fish that day, by the way.
Yeah,
But I did think like the fish, or at least tried.
Well,
I
Jeremy
don't know
should
Jeremy.
know
I'll
that.
look him up, though.
Yeah. So Jeremy should know that we are not copyright infringing because Jim just told a unique story about using that wonderful title. But it has a lot of meaning. And what do you think the meaning is? I mean, you started to explain the meaning for a business owner, but maybe reflect on it a little bit more. What does it mean to think like a fish as a CEO or as a business?
Well, let's talk CEO. That's really my area, I would say. more than business, my expertise is in CEO think. And for a CEO who, by definition, is multifaceted, has responsibilities over a very, very wide array of needs for the business. In every environment within which they are moving things forward, they need to keep in mind the idea of thinking like a fish, because it's human connection. Obviously, you're not thinking like a fish; you're thinking like that human that's across the table from you. But a CEO's role is really kind of simple. And while we can get into depth on any number of areas, the fundamental two main priorities are: number one, delivering a compelling vision of the future and asking for volunteers. And number two, allocating resources for the achievement of the vision. Believe it or not, there are a zillion things. I have a client who gave me a 3-page listing of his responsibilities. And I said, well, let's boil this down. Let's boil this down to what the essence of this is. Mm-hmm. And there is the transactional and the tactical part of running any business that can be mind-boggling. But for the CEOs that spend all of their energy or the bulk of their energy focusing on the transactional side of the business, they are missing the strategic and the higher level parts of the business that really are the pieces that engage people. Now, we've seen this a lot in Gen Zs, believe it or not, who have moved, the generations as they've progressed have moved away from the baby boom materiality, if you will. It was all about ownership and having stuff, to more experiential and toward more social benefit. We're seeing this in the younger generations where they want to work with an organization that has a higher purpose than simple profit. And going back when we talked about, persuasion years ago and the decades in the past, where 100% was on profitability. Then it moved to shareholder, and then to stakeholder, and the stakeholders included employees, and the stakeholders included shareholders, and the stakeholder included vendors, and all those kind of things. That now I'm kind of lost my train of thought, but the whole idea is that a CEO has to be malleable and adaptable and communicate with all audiences in an uplifting, inspirational way to move a business forward.
So any tips or tools on how to implement thinking like a fish?
Well, the first thing is putting yourself in the other person's shoes and realizing or thinking through, to the best of your ability, their reality. Within which and what context are they coming to you? And if it's a meeting that you are CEO, you're asking a subordinate to come to a meeting, chances are pretty darn good there's a stress level there that employee faces, because you are the CEO. You're the ultimate decision point in their career and their livelihood. So first off, you need to realize that you have power that you may not even really acknowledge, that is clearly a part of their persona when they walk in the room. Then beyond that, there are CEOs who create great friendships with their employees and deep, deep relationships that last a lifetime. And gosh, love them for that, because that's wonderful. But at the same time, to be just nothing but a friend is failing to be a CEO, because your job is to inspire them to achieve greatness in their own life and their own career through your guidance, your mentorship, your coaching. And another thing I'll throw in, which is a little bit not directly answering to your question, but I think is important, and that is you have to give your people a chance to fail. Environments where failure is a sin or firing a terminatable offense never keeps the top people. It's funny, I had a meeting this morning before we met, Kirk, that with the guy who was telling me his management philosophy was that he would tell people when they first started working for him, I expect you to fail, but I expect you to fail once, not fail 2 or 3 times on the same problem. I expect you to learn from that failure and then go on and press the limits and fail again and keep getting better and better and better. And the idea he shared with me, which I thought was really wonderful, was that the human being learns more from failure than from success. And when you allow a person with potential and enthusiasm and passion for your business to fail, when you give them the right to fail, and then you encourage them along the path to getting it all right, you're actually accelerating their growth as well as the growth of your company.
Yeah. I think there's so many business owners that are terrified of the idea that their team are going to fail. I think they're absolutely terrified. And what's really interesting is I don't think we are as aware of how many times we've failed and how much we've learned from that. And what do you think about that?
Well, I think it's dangerous for a CEO ever to be terrified of anything. And yet we are all the time. We all, to one degree or another, suffer from the imposter syndrome where we wonder why we're where we are. And we know that we're not maybe in some areas as good as we've been spoken of, just like your introduction to me today. I know that's kind of, very glowing things, but I know I'm not up for that really, all that those accolades. But it's very dangerous for a CEO to display fear outwardly because they are perceived as the iron. They're like Margaret Thatcher, the Iron Woman. What was she called? The Iron Prime Minister, whatever. How she was never flappable. And your employees want to know from you that you're a stabilizing force in turmoil, that you are able to keep your head about you when all others are losing theirs. The old I think it was Rudyard Kipling poem, If. They need to know that you have their best interest at heart and that you are, in fact, a supporter, not a detractor of their gains and their learnings and their contributions. And so I'm really rambling here, but I didn't prepare for this. And so getting off track a little bit.
I wanted you to ramble. Well, you don't have to ramble, but I'm not sure why you feel like you are because I asked you a question, but I wanted to get you off the cuff because you always have answers, which I love. So here, I'm going to move on to the next one now. So this is another quote, I guess, that you use, analogy, and I love it. When you first said it, makes so much sense. I'm going to ask you a couple questions after I share it here. So simplicity is an act of selection, not compression. Can you share that, the purpose of that and where you first heard it?
Yeah. I'm not sure I can remember where I first heard it, but it has become a part of my conversation because I think it's so powerful. And let me, before you ask your other questions, just a little bit about simplicity. I follow believe it or not, I do know this, the Leonardo da Vinci view, which is simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. As a CEO running a business, you are immersed in complexity, regardless of the business. And part of your ambition and job is to simplify to essence, to what is most important. And in a way, don't worry about the other stuff. Now that sounds ridiculous, and it is in some respects, but the goal of the CEO is to walk above the mire that is immersed in that is a part of every business, the complexity, and to make your stories and that you will tell connect with people, human beings, at a level that they can not only appreciate, embrace, but remember. I think that's really, really important. So when I say the quote I think you talked about with simplicity is a selection
Active selection
is an active selection, not compression. When I often advise my clients, okay, we got to simplify this. We got to simplify this message. We got to simplify this product. We have to simplify this supply chain flow through. Often the response is to just jam more in. And jamming more in actually increases the complexity and moves 180 degrees away from the target you're trying to build. So you have to select, you have to make judgments on, to get this, I must give up that. And it's very, very hard.
I've
CEOs
got this,
typically are pack rats.
yeah, I've got this crazy story. It's so perfect for now. Years
Tell it.
ago, so before we became ProudMouth, I was brand consultant and working with this money manager in New York. And when I met them, they had 800 million in assets. And the owner and his son were traveling 42 weeks of the year. And what they were traveling doing is they were talking about their investment philosophy. They had written a book. It was well accepted among financial advisors, and they were managing money for advisors, clients, assets. And what they were doing is they were traveling around talking about their philosophy, and they were presenting, doing, client appreciation events, seminars, like, business growth opportunities, things like that. And they were exhausted. The worst part about that, from what they were telling me, is they were away from family, which was a problem, but they didn't have time to work on their business because they were always working in the business. And so they invited me down to see if we could come up with some ways to help. Now, what was really interesting is they were all doing all this. They had a national sales team with 8 people. And I was thinking to myself, they were not empowered, right? Because every
Yeah.
time somebody needed to talk about the story, it was always one of the 2 owners. Anyway, I sat down in a boardroom, an hour and a half. The owner, the senior, told, I'm going to say 25 stories about why people should invest with them. I'm not kidding, 25. And I let him go because he was really good. He was so good at it. You could see why people love being around him. He could just tell a story like so
Yeah.
well. I said, well, what are your top 5? And he gave his top 5. It took him some time, and within 5-10 minutes, he had figured out his top 5 kind of. And I said, why not just tell those 5 stories, and we'll help your team be so good at those 5 stories that they can own those 5 stories, because they can't own 25, but
Good
they can
point.
probably own 5.
Yeah.
Would you agree? Yeah, I think they're great. Are these 5 stories the ones that are the most? Yeah, they're the most important. So we did this act of selection, not compression, which
Yeah.
happens in marketing, right? Everybody, if you think about building a web page, a financial advisor, business owner, an RIA, whoever you are, you always, well, what about this? What about that? What about this? We do this, we do that. And it ends up being, well, who are you? Because you're doing everything, and I don't need to hear all this. Tell me the stuff I need to remember and take away, and just hit me with that. Hit me with it. ProudMouth is an influence acceleration. We're influence accelerator. We are way more than a podcast company, right?
Yep. You are.
So that's who we are. And but it's okay to be known for podcasting,
Sure.
as well as the other thing. But anyway, so what
That's
we
a
end up
great
doing
story.
is this is well, I'm not done. It gets more,
Oh, it
but
gets better.
I'll
Okay.
get through the rest of it quickly here. What we did is we created 5 videos, 5 animated videos that visually and audio wise told these little musings about why you should work with them, invest in their investment philosophy. And what we did is we made these available to the advisors. So when they were at a seminar or webinar, or even in a client meeting, they could play the video. And then eventually, they were going to own it, but they could play the video, put it on their website, play it and they didn't need these guys anymore. So they started not traveling, created a new product, had one of the best days on the New York Stock Exchange ever, 2-point-something billion.
Wow.
And then after a year and a half, when I left, they were $3.6 billion asset, 3.6 in assets under administration. Huge growth.
From 800 million. That's awesome.
Yeah. And the funny thing is it didn't really have anything to do with our company. It really, we didn't go build that new product. They did all kinds of great things, but what's really odd about marketing sometimes, and what consultants do, is they solve problems in business, but marketing solves a problem in a business. And if you do it, and that's a simple view of it. I don't know why people don't take that, but anyway, the whole point of this was not that marketing solves problem. The whole point was that by simply selecting 5 things instead of 25, an active selection, not compression, it made a massive impact. And there's areas all through your business where you can do this stuff. So Jim's a guest. I'm going to get back to him. So the next,
but let me before you ask the next question, I want to comment on part of that. The interesting thing you just described was a CEO and his partner who were adept at storytelling. And then you helped them simplify by selecting the 5 out of the 25 that really resonated and created a video so that they were no longer necessary in that mix. The optimal goal is to have your people be storytellers so that you are embedding in them through your example stories that they tell and they embrace as their story, because their story is related to the business. The stories that come from your people down the chain of command are every bit as valuable as those that are taught through example at the top of the pyramid. And so I really love the way you described and you helped that client go to 3.8 billion. I mean, that's quite a success story. Pretty awesome.
Yeah, I'm going to move on to the next. I'm going to skip one here because I'll mention it at the end to give some context to it. But the next one is, you quoted a famous CEO and the 3 things that they would do as a leader and walk around the company and ask everybody. And I loved it. And not just myself, but my team used this 3-question system to connect with people all the time. And I think it was so wonderful when you said it made so much sense. Do you want to share that?
First, is that the Jack Welch?
Yeah, the 3 things.
Yeah.
Now, I think I might have modified them a little bit, but you tell yours and then I'll tell you how I modified it. And then, we'll go from there. So hit it.
Yeah, Jack Welch, of course, one of the iconic CEOs of the 20th century, CEO of GE, had a gigantic conglomerate, which has since been changed quite a bit. But net, his reputation, and he talks about this in one of his books, his reputation, he had a pattern when he walked through plants and he went and kicked the tires, so to speak. He would basically ask people and executives he ran into 3 specific questions. First question was, what's going on? Open-ended. What's going on? Second question was, what are you doing about it? And third question was, how can I help? And I just love that and all of the things it represents. It represents fluidity, creativity, and power. The power being, I am looking to you with my questions. I'm looking to you for a contemporaneous and accurate view of your area. I'm looking to you to hear your creative energies around how are you managing these challenges. All businesses, all departments have challenges. And then I'm offering my service to help. And, if you're a Jack Welch at the very top of this multi-billion-dollar corporation, darn well you're not going to be asked, well, I need you to talk to my next door neighbor because I just don't like the noise they're making during their meetings. I mean, you're going to pick and choose your requests very carefully. But an interesting part of that story, Kirk, is that apparently, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I still like if it is true, the person that didn't have answers to those questions, including the third one, how may I help you? He would question whether or not they're the right person in the spot. And it's really a fascinating methodology to sort of make a judgment call. Do I have the right person in the right seat that is passionate about that seat, passionate about performance and gain, understands the issues and problems they're facing, has a plan and is dealing with those, and is not afraid to ask for help from the CEO to move his business forward? And I think hopefully that's the story you wanted me to tell a little bit about. I love it. And those 3 questions can empower any CEO at any time of the day. They don't take a lot of time, a lot of preparation, but you learn a whole lot.
Yeah, you do learn a lot. I've been using these for about a year and a half, and have shared them with other, leaders in the team. I changed them a little bit. I don't know if it's helpful, but I'll just list them for everybody. I don't have it verbatim, but off the top of my head, the first one, instead of what's going on, I ask what's going well. And then the next one is what's not going well, or we could be doing better, or we haven't started yet that we should be. The third one is how can I help? So I didn't change that one.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Well,
Yeah.
having your own version of it is fine. I think, what's going well is great. And I like that. But was your second one I missed because I was into the dog? What was the second one again?
What's not going as well
Got it.
could be better, or we haven't started yet that we should be doing.
Yeah. Good. You
So
covered bases there.
they're a little complicated. That one's a little complicated, a little wordy, but
Yeah.
yeah,
I instinctively like Jack's better than yours. And the reason is it's open ended. Yours is closed. What's well, I got to think about what is going well. Gosh, the day I'm having, nothing's going well, but I'm going to make something up for my CEO. What's going bad? Well, let me unload on you here. And what I want is, I want to see that person and have that person react with the good, the bad, the ugly, everything, because it gives me insight into where their thinking is. Anyway, I love your
kinda separated
variation, and I'd
them
say
into
run with it.
yeah, I separated them to the good and the bad because I wanted to start off a call with what's going well on a
Yeah.
positive thing, and then kind of slowly move into the is there anything not going so well, but also do it with the idea that it's okay if things aren't going well. I expect they're not, and go from there. So I don't
I've
know if
got
that
one.
makes any sense.
I've got one more for you that you're probably going to want to edit out if you don't mind.
Mhm.
And that is CEOs need to be careful of the shit sandwich. The shit sandwich is everybody knows that when you're called into the big bosses or human resources or whatever office, that there's bad news coming your way. And they know that it's usually led off with a nice little compliment, and then you get zinged in the middle of it, and then it ends in a nice compliment. And the fact of the matter is, most people know what's coming, they know what's happening, and it sort of undermines believability and credibility. It's really better not to focus on the shit sandwich,
Not to
where in
set
the
them up
middle you
for
put all the
yeah,
complaints,
yeah.
but
Don't
to
set them
just
up.
talk, with the person. I know you've had some challenges with this. Can you tell me more about that? Your next door neighbor has really been complaining about you because of this. And I'd love to hear, why, what's going on? Why is there an issue here? Instead of, gosh, you look nice today. Oh, by the way, bah, 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 bah. Oh, gee, I hope you have a great day. So the shit sandwich is another fun one to remember as a CEO or as any manager in business is more important than just the struggle of getting across the negative messaging. It's still a process of relationship building. And if you look at it that way, you'll approach it differently.
I can see how a lot of I won't say a lot. I won't judge there. I can see that there are leaders who would struggle with the shit sandwich that you just mentioned. And by the way, that's allowed to stay on this podcast, so don't worry about it. It's with
Okay.
it's with good taste and intentions.
All right.
I do believe that the way that I do that, because I'm a mostly positive leader, is that I would be contributing to that. But I do, like anybody, you want to be aware of that. So I think that's really important advice, is to be careful of not falling into that, because then anytime you leave with something good, it's never going to feel good because I feel like something bad's coming.
Right.
So
Exactly.
I agree. You got to be real careful there. So I will consider that in the
Okay.
future.
All right.
Okay. The next one and the last one is you actually started talking about this earlier. This is a little slightly different, but kind of the same thing. Actually, it is the same thing, but it's a little more detail. You talked about a 5-step process for businesses that are evolving into CEOs and the five. I'll start with the 5 steps because
Okay.
I don't want to make this a guessing game. But the first one is, so 5 steps to being a great CEO are: number 1, vision; number 2, communication; number 3, delegation; number 4, monitoring; and number 5, repeat. So what led you to developing these steps? Read a book, experience it. You already talked about it earlier. You talked about it a little differently. You said vision, and then you talked about giving people the resources to get the job done.
Vision, volunteers, resources was, vision and volunteers is really one. Well, let me go back to the first.
They're all in. It's all the same thing. This, and I don't remember where you gave me the 5, but I wrote it down.
Kind of, yeah. But let me go back for one thing I didn't mention when we first got started about the main 2 jobs of resource allocation, compelling vision in the future and asking for volunteers. And that is the asking for volunteers part I didn't mention, but it sort of relates to all these 5 steps you just talked about. We as CEOs need to think of our employees, our independent contractors, our vendors, our customers, and our shareholders as volunteers. Not as indentured servitude, which went out with the 13th Amendment. And that's a tectonic shift over the last 50 years in business that I would encourage all business owners and CEOs to be thinking about. Because fundamentally, people do have choices today that they have not always had in history. They may go elsewhere. If your story and your vision isn't strong enough, isn't lofty enough, isn't worthy of their very best efforts, you won't keep your best people. But the tactical, the transactional. So anyway, net, treat them like volunteers. Love them, build relationship, talk with them. Don't hide in a closet all day long. Get out on the shop floor. Spend time getting to know these people because they're more than your employees. They're your friends. They're your allies in the bigger quest you're trying to go for. When you get down to the transactional level for a CEO, those 5 things absolutely apply. And as you're building a company, the vision is absolutely first and foremost. That's why are you better? Why are you different? Why does that make a difference? Why would someone pay you to do what you're doing versus your competition out there? So the vision, the magnitude of it, the social good, et cetera, are all vitally important. Communicating that, which was your number 2, is something that most CEOs get really tired of. And I've had so many tell me over the years, oh my gosh, I feel like a broken record. I keep coming back and having to say it over and over again. And the reality is, yes, you do. That's part of your job. You need to bring believers into your mix. You need to not have somebody just nod their head and go off and live their own life. You need them to embrace your vision and give it their all and build their own stories about why what they're doing in your company is so important to the overall good of the world, as well as in your particular niche. Yeah. So communication in different ways, the same stories and messages and enhancing those stories around a company are vitally important to the culture that you're trying to build. Culture can be very positive. It can be very negative. And I've seen both. And part of building a positive culture is creating the dialogue of business in a way that people understand how to talk, when to talk, what to share, and all the parts of growing as a group, an aggregate group, growing this business together. The third thing you talked about was delegation. This is something a lot of CEOs are troubled with while they're in the middle market, let's say. And delegation is part of the key to great leadership. Again, if you give a compelling vision of the future and ask for volunteers, you're asking for people to volunteer to pick up part of the load, to carry part of the process of growing and achieving your vision. So learning how to delegate, which also comes back to your 4th point, which was monitoring their progress. It's more than just monitoring your people's progress after you've delegated a job. It's coaching them. It's teaching them. It's showing them how to behave when crisis hits. It's teaching them how to, there goes the dog again, sorry. It's teaching them how to be better at not only what they're doing, but how to embrace leadership as its opportunities are presented to them. And then the last one is repeat. You need to go through this exercise. These are transactional thoughts and exercises to being a great CEO, but you continue to build, to build, to build on all of these things. And the best way to grow a company is to build your people, is to develop your people so that they are better at you than you at the function that they are responsible for. That's how you uplift a CEO, is to uplift them through the relationship with high talent.
I've noticed that more and more, that you can't get anywhere special if you don't have people who want to help get you there and are capable of it and committed. And that's why having a vision and communicating it and delegating it, like trusting them to do it, is so important. You cannot possibly do this or dictate it right on your own. You have to communicate it. You got to embrace it. You got to get them to buy in. I personally, I wonder if there's too many or there's CEOs and leaders who maybe don't have a vision, or maybe the vision is all about them and not about like what we can do together in the first place. Because if you have that, then for me, I love communicating our story. Like I could talk about it all day long. Every day I could talk about it. I talked about it today with two important people on my team. I know we had a bit of a shift in, our org structure here. And I was, thinking maybe, let's just remind everybody what we're working towards here. And we had like a 5 minutes, and it was great. I enjoyed it. It gets me jacked up every time I talk about it.
Yeah, it's true. It does. It buoys you in addition to others. And that, you're kind of a company's cheerleader. You're the one who inspires others to reach high.
I just worry sometimes that, just cross my mind. I wonder if people have visions maybe that aren't as effective at inspiring people to want, and also feel like, hey, I want you to participate in this. I don't want you to do this for me. I want you to do it for us. And I do spend a lot of time talking about in our company here, how I don't know what the opportunities are ahead, but I know that if we all put our best effort forward, the opportunities will be boundless. I don't know what's in store for your role. I don't know where you're going to fit, but you can dictate that. And if we do it all together, we'll have way more options than if we don't work together.
Yeah. Yeah. You as a CEO, you kind of have to give them clues to what the future may hold for them individually. Mm-hmm. And that's very, very important. You're not going to commit to it because everything is moving, and you have to be adaptable in life and certainly in one's career. But it's helpful to have a CEO that gives clues of what you're thinking or where they could possibly end up, but then conclude with, but it's really, you can write your own ticket. If you're committed, if you're bright, if you're capable, if you work well in a team environment, all the components that we look for in trying to get the right person in the right seat in a business, helping them understand your view of them and the vital role they play is gold, just real gold. So I would encourage CEOs to spend the time to think that through. And back to your other point about some CEOs may not have clarity around vision. The reality is most CEOs don't have complete clarity around vision because everything is going to be moving. There's an old expression that if an investor knew what actually would be necessary for their investment to be successful, they never would invest. And so to open your mind and heart in a way to ambiguity is also a really important skill for a CEO. That yes, we want you to be decisive and make decisions, and you're going to be making decisions without full knowledge. That's just the nature of the beast. But to be comfortable in that ambiguity and be willing to change direction rapidly when you discover you're on the wrong path is part of the skill set.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big reason that I have you here and sought you out and continue to have you here, is that we can reflect. Well, we do reflect every 2 weeks on what's coming up there are adjustments. Sometimes we think we're on this and all of a sudden, there's other things, but not just keeps me focused, but I feel like I've got somebody to lean on for a voice that gets where I'm at all the time. It knows where I'm headed and can tell me, hey, this is, but I know you still let me fail where I need to fail, if that makes any sense. I mean, you can talk about it, but until you experience it, the CEOs might not get it.
Yeah. The reason I love what I do is because I'm working with people that are really smart, really driven, really want to do great things for their talented teams and want to change the world in one way or another. And that's a joy for me to work with people like that. I don't consider my role to be the answer man. My role is to be what's the word, to excavate, to pull out from your genius your thinking and just help in a nominal way refine it so that it's even better through the experiences that I've had and you have had and the experience we have together. That's why it's such a fun business. And having clients like you always makes it just a joy to get up in the morning.
Yeah, and it's funny because that's why I guess one way of describing how I decided to go with you. It's not that you don't have a system. It's that you're a lot more flexible. You're more about, the team that's on the ice, if you will, and what their strengths are versus just here, you got to do this, you got to do that. And I felt I was just hey, I think this guy really cares about our business and believes in what we're doing, but it's, I feel like they're going to let me be me in this and not try to make me into something I'm not, which I think most people don't want to do. And I don't. I think it's hard enough to be myself to try to be somebody else. Right?
Yeah. There's not a cookie cutter to being a CEO. A CEO is capitalizing on one's greatest strengths, filling in the gaps where you have inexperience or not as strong, surrounding yourself with the talent that can make 1 and 1 make 5, not 3 or 2, but 5. And adding talent along the way that you delegate, you teach, you role play the behaviors that are important to support the culture. And then you feed the flowers. You just feed the flowers with your encouragement, your guidance. And pretty soon you have a hell of a garden.
Sunflowers. I love sunflowers. So sunflowers stand tall. The birds always knock out the seeds and next year you have more. And they're going to grow tall again and they nourish everything around them. They're incredible. I love them when they grow up here and there in the yard because an animal is eating them, move the seeds around, if I'll just say it that way. And you're a wonderful sunflower too, my friend, and I appreciate you. Thanks for doing this with me.
Yeah, hopefully something in here is helpful for somebody, but I always enjoy our time, Kirk. Thank you so much. And I'm so proud of what ProudMouth is doing. You're really, really making waves and the right waves in this journey to big and great. So congratulations.
So before you stop listening here, and hopefully I caught you before, I know sometimes they're done. I wanted to share something. I'd love some feedback on how you felt about listening to this type of conversation. There was a little bit of marketing strewn throughout this, which is the main topic of our podcast. I'm curious what you thought of listening to this. If you liked it, if you wanted, if it didn't have something, feel free. If you got more questions, about any of the stuff that Jim talked about, if you want to reach out to Jim, how would they do that?
Yeah, the easiest way would be probably email, and I'll give the email address. It's Cascino, CASCINO, at c-suite, suite.co, C-O. No M at the end. Cascino at csuite.co. And the name is Casino, but it actually has 2 C's in it. So that's where most people go wrong. That'd be the easiest way to reach me. Or they could probably come through you, and I don't think the phones are going to be buzzing and keeping you busy on referring.
Yeah, we will.
your
Yeah, they
call.
can also reach out. You can reach you on LinkedIn. If you want to send me a message, you can email me, kirk@proudmouth.com, KIRK, or you can send me a DM through LinkedIn, preferably. I'm on there every day, and I'd really love your feedback. I'd love for you to post a review in your podcast player if you haven't already done so. Would greatly appreciate that. And thanks for being our friends. Thanks for listening. It means a lot to us. I think it's I love being able to bring on people like Jim who mean a lot, have made an impact on my business and my life. It's great to be able to give them the platform to talk or to share their thoughts and stories with you. I hope you got a lot out of this. And next time, Mr. Matt Halloran will be back screaming and laughing with a little more energy than I can muster up.
Yeah.
But thanks so much for listening. Have a great day.
Thank you, Kirk. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.